Hello, my name is Dwight Hutchison, and I'm the author of several books and articles about the Star of Bethlehem. And this is the 8th video in a series of videos about the star. And today we're going to be exploring some heavenly signals, if you like, concerning the arrival of a great king. And these are in addition to the ones that we just did in the 7th video, they're pretty unique. As we have already said in previous videos, the planets move in the heavens among the background stars, and that people can see that. You can go out and watch over a period of time Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and Mercury move among the background stars. And in 3 and 2 BC, the planet Jupiter was moving among the background stars in the constellation Leo. It had appeared there in Leo in the summer of 3 BC, and it was moving over a period of about a year through the constellation, and it would do movements toward the east and then toward the west and then back toward the east. And these are called retrograde motions, and there are stopping points when the planet appears to stop. And we talked about that in the previous video and some others. In this video, we're going to be exploring when the planet was passing by the king star Regulus. And so what you have is you have the planet of righteousness, Sedek, Jupiter in more traditional English terms, that passes by this king star Regulus, and during this period of 1 year, and it goes by it 3 times. And in 2 of those situations, there is something fairly remarkable that happens, because the moon shows up just beside the 2 stars. And if you remember, there is Regulus, which is a king star, which is a stationary star in Leo. And there is also the star, the planet, Jupiter, which was regarded as the king star par excellence, if you like, the really high-grade king star. And both of them were called MUL.BABBAR for the Babylonians, which means the king star. Yeah. So each time that the planet passes by Regulus, that's called a conjunction, and the first of those conjunctions happened in September of 3 BC. And these type of conjunctions do happen about 10 to 15 times every 100 years. And sometimes there were 2 of these conjunctions during a period of a year. Sometimes there were 3. Sometimes there were no visible conjunctions of the 2 objects as Jupiter would pass Regulus. But as I said, in 3 and 2 BC, there were 3 of these conjunctions, and the first one is in September of 3 BC. Myself, I do not think it is very significant as far as things go. Some people have tried to attach this to a whole different theory about the star. I'm not going to go into that. I will be giving my critique of some other Christian star theories in another video. But the second royal conjunction of the two king stars, Jupiter and Regulus, happened in February of 2 BC, and that is a little bit more interesting, because as the two stars come closest together, and I say stars because the Babylonians even called Jupiter MUL.BABBAR, meaning the white star, as we've talked about in other videos. As the two of those stars were coming the closest together, the moon came and parked itself exactly beside them. And in the last video, in video 7, we saw that the moon is a witness to the enduring nature of the Messiah's throne, that the Messiah's throne will be established forever. And we saw that in Psalm 89, that the sun and the moon are witnesses that the Messiah's throne will be established forever. It's very plainly written there. So in this particular circumstance, you have the moon coming and parking itself exactly beside those two king stars at the moment that they are the closest together. Now, I can tell you that that is something that does not happen all the time. This would be rare, and I don't have any specific calculations on how rare it would be. I'm not very good with statistics, but I assure you that if you just take out a astronomy program and you start doing this, and you go through the conjunctions of Jupiter and Regulus over several centuries, you will not find this happening again. It takes many more centuries before it would happen again. And what is really interesting is the next thing. In May of 2 BC, the planet Jupiter has moved, and then it moves back, and there it is with Regulus again. So you have the two king stars together again, and what happens? The moon shows up right beside them again at the high point of their conjunction, when they're the closest together. And if you go a few days before or a few days after, there's a notable difference. Even the next day, Jupiter is further along. And so right at the time when these two king stars are the closest together, you have this conjunction of the two with the moon as well. And again, the moon is a witness that the throne of the Messiah will be established forever. One needs to remember that according to Joseph in the book of Genesis, concerning dreams at least, if something is repeated, that it is determined by God, and it will certainly come to pass, and apparently promptly. And so here this event is repeated, just like we saw in other situations in the last video. Now, the last heavenly signal, or sign, if you want, that I want to talk about today, is something that happened in June of 2 BC in the western sky in the evening. And there was something fairly remarkable. There, the planet Venus came together with the planet Jupiter, and the two were joined together visually so that you could not tell one from the other. And this is extremely rare. It has happened in the history of the world before this event in 2 BC, and afterwards as well. In 1968, someone proposed for the first time that this particular incident was the Star of Bethlehem. There's been quite a lot said and done and written and videos about this. And the event is spectacular because you have Venus and Jupiter that visually become one. You can't tell the difference between them for about 2.5 hours or so in that on that June 17th evening in 2 BC. And it's pretty spectacular in some ways. There was a book that was written that said that this was the star that astonished the world. But I would like to just fill you in on a few details that may have escaped some of the major proponents of this. I asked an astronomer and also a cosmologist to calculate the brightness of this conjunction, because people think that it's extremely, extremely bright. And Venus all by itself was at the minus 4.3 of brightness before the conjunction. After the conjunction, and during the conjunction, I want to say, the two planets together were at minus 4.4, which is some more, but not that much more. And very often Venus is at minus 4.6 or minus 4.7. The greater the number, even if it's negative, means that it's brighter in astronomical terms. And so I found it really curious when people think that this is the absolute brightest thing that ever happened, because every year Venus is much brighter than this particular incident. But it is impressive because one can follow the progression of Venus in particular across the sky until it reaches Jupiter, and then they become as one, and the next day they're separated. You can see it very plainly if you look at an astronomy program. The two planets move apart very, very quickly. Now, some people have proposed this as representing a father god and a mother goddess coming together and having a baby symbolically. And I just don't think that that is good symbolic, that represents good symbolic ideas for the incarnation of the Son of God. And Mary was a virgin. Everything is a bit off with this representation, but that is the most widespread interpretation of this event in Christian circles, and I have been raising a revolt against that interpretation. If you start thinking about this, the planet Venus is named Noga in Hebrew, and that means great brightness. And when you think about Jupiter, That means Sedek, which is, or the name is Sedek in Hebrew, and that means righteousness. And so it kind of seems like to me that you've got a real bright righteousness coming together here in the Lion constellation beside the King star, Lugal Regulus, Melech, if one used a Hebrew term for it, which means king. And so there you have a combination which is much more interesting for us as Christians or Messianic believers than this business of a Father God coming together with the Mother Goddess to have a baby. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize this, but in the western sky in the evening, at least for the Babylonians, Venus was actually a male god, a war god. And so in this particular case, if you go to the Babylonian Omen catalog and you use their ideas about these things, in this particular case, you have this war god hitting the king planet, which would certainly harm the king. And so it doesn't have anything to do in Babylonian thought with a father god coming together with the mother goddess to make a baby. That's just Christian ideas imposed on pagan concepts of the planets being gods and goddesses. And but it's actually not what that they thought. The planet Venus is only a female goddess in the morning, in the eastern sky, not in the western sky at night. So if you get the video by Frederick Larson, or you read the book by Mr. Martin, they've written, or they've done some things about this. Their central idea of interpreting this particular event is completely false. And so anyway, I think that by this time, when the wise men in the East, the Babylonian astronomers, are looking at all these things, and they have seen several things, just as I pointed out, then they're going to start asking questions. And you'll notice as well that our friend, the lunar witness, arrives in this situation. And as the two planets are together in the Lion constellation, beside the King star Regulus, in the west, in the east, the full moon rises. And there's several things I could say about that. But there it is again, this lunar witness that the throne of the Messiah will be established forever. And we need to be thinking about that type of interpretation of these events. And I think that that's really what happened to the Babylonians. They saw so many things that took place, and they started to ask questions, and they became aware of the Jewish way of looking at some of these things, and they said, wow, this is all talking about a great king that will arise. This king planet is there at specific points, and there's symbolic things that happened with the king star, with the sun and the moon, and there's something really big happening concerning kingship, and so they interpreted things according to their own ideas. We talked about the coins and how the moon is there with Regulus symbolically. And the moon was with Regulus several times when there were symbolic things happening to the king planet. And so we've talked about all this. Now, I think that there are other possible signs, signals, if you like, from heaven concerning this, the arrival of this great king. But we're not going to explore any more of that. In the coming video, we will be looking concerning the star in the west, as it was over Bethlehem when the wise men arrived there. And I'll talk about exactly how we should be interpreting the text where it says that the star went on before them. I do not think it went on before them visually, but it did get to the place, and it did get above the place where the child was when the men were there. And we'll be exploring that in detail in the next video.